Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well today. In this video, we're going over a ton of new Star Citizen news we just got over the past few days. This includes things like when the Perseus will release, updates on some big ship features, some slightly disappointing Invictus news, and much more. Feel free to stick around here and hang with me as we go through all of this great information. Before we get started though, feel free to subscribe if you are enjoying the content. I do have channel memberships open if you want to go the extra mile to support the channel, and feel free to join the community Discord. I will have a link for that down below. Without further ado, though, let's get into all of the news. First things first, let's discuss some of the ship news. I don't want to keep anyone waiting, so let's get the Perseus out of the way really quickly. As some may know, we got a ton of information this past weekend from a bar citizen in China. This includes an early screening of an Invictus Star Citizen Live and a bunch of discussion with John Crew himself. It is said that he confirmed that the Perseus will be flyable for IAE this year, and it has a few upgrades alongside it. This includes the main turrets being upgunned to size 8, whilst there will also be 2 size 3 remote turrets added, as well as 4 PDCs to the exterior. Again, this is absolutely not a surprise, but hearing it again, possibly from John Crew, is excellent news and super exciting for me and many players. Remember, a lot of the things we're going to hear about today are going to be word of mouth from John Crew. Some of it will be official information from the Star Citizen Live, so I will try and clarify what that is whenever we get to it. But just a heads up, some of this you do have to take with a pinch of salt just in case something was misinterpreted along the way. Next thing here we have to mention though, and is officially confirmed, is the name of new ship that we should be getting this year. The RSI Meteor was mentioned by John Crew at the end of the SCL video and will seemingly punch above its weight class. That's really the only information on it. Some think that this is the RSI Mantis style ship that's being produced, and whilst it certainly could be, there isn't really a ton of reasons to think about it yet. We don't really know if this thing will come, anytime soon. It is supposed to come out this year, but that could be at the very end of the year. So I'd say don't worry about it too much, but it's exciting because we do have another RSI ship coming down the line. Now, one thing I did want to mention before we move on is the Ironclad and the lack of information around it. Now, I actually have some theories around what's going on with the Ironclad, but I will save that for the end of the video so I give you as much context as possible. Given some of the news we got here today, I feel like it kind of narrows down the release window for that ship, but then again, it is a little bit speculative, so I will wait till the end to share that information. But just want to keep you informed the Ironclad was not mentioned at this event, though I do have my own ideas as to when we might see it. Moving on a bit though, we got some excellent news on Maelstrom. This is from the official Star Citizen Live. So, John Crew basically said that about 70% of these Squadron ships are done being converted to this model. There are some ships that will get a limited version of Maelstrom and Squadron as they are seen very briefly, but overall it really does look like the system is coming together a bit more. Now, I will say that given the fact that they aren't quite done with Squadron ships, I doubt that we will see this in, the PU anytime soon, most likely at the very earliest late 2026, but it does look like from the Star Citizen Live that they have a pretty solid way of getting the old damage model updated to the new Maelstrom model. So I think that's good and hopefully see the 100% completion of that for Squadron 42. At least they'll have to do that because, the game does release next year, but it is at the very least good news that they are most of the way through. Now, something that they talked about right after this with Maelstrom is actually how it affects the physics and weight of your ship. This is actually really interesting because I didn't realize this was a part of the Maelstrom model initially, but things like the materials your ship's made out of, the components, and the cargo and things inside of the ship will heavily affect how it flies within atmosphere. This is actually something we do partially have in game right now, only for ships that carry cargo on the outside of the ships, like the Hull C and Hull A. But in the future, with the Maelstrom model, it does seem that basically everything will affect how your ship flies in atmosphere, whether it's inside it or outside of it, which I think is a really cool change. And speaking of these kind of different flight changes, they did mention flight control services as well. This isn't really something that they talked about much. They basically just said it's going to be a big change for how we fly ships, of course, in atmosphere. So I'm really excited for control surfaces. Unfortunately, they didn't say much about it, but again, super exciting, and I cannot wait to hear and see more about it. Now, something that they also did talk about on the Star Citizen Live was capital ship balancing for the future. There was basically talk about how capitals aren't designed for atmosphere and how using one as a daily driver will be much more difficult in the future. I am really glad to hear them talk about this, and some of the changes that they did talk about are really nice to hear. We actually knew about this from a long time ago, but it was really a debate whether or not they would go through with it. But they basically said that flying in atmosphere with a capital ship is going to be not the best idea or something that you're going to want to try and avoid. I really like this because it gives a lot of better balancing changes, and I think it makes capital ships acts more as hubs rather than just simply using that as your main ship. It's very clear that they want the movement for those to slow down and to have a bit more, I guess, of a tactical stance when it comes to combat. So it's not really just like a send it in there and use it as a dogfighter of some sorts. I'm really excited about these changes and I really can't wait to see them. But obviously, we're going to need more capital ships and actual capital gameplay for it to matter too much. But regardless, it does look like they have a good outline for it for the future. Moving on to something a little bit different. This is a little bit more word of mouth from John Crew, but he basically mentioned that the completion of Squadron 42 will give players a mysterious small ship. Now, personally, I think this actually could be the F7X that we saw in the Squadron demo last year, but this is absolutely not confirmed. It's very clear that it's probably not going to be the F8C anymore, probably for balancing reasons across the verse, as well as the fact that they've already sold it and they probably want to make it something that's actually unique to Squadron 42. So I'm thinking it's the F7X, given the fact that it's a very unique fighter that probably won't be too overpowered for players to have, but not entirely sure. I would actually love to hear your guesses on that down below. Now, moving on a bit, I did want to actually talk about some of the more disappointing news that they talked about at this event with John Crew. It does seem that there's a few things here and there that I know people aren't going to like to hear, but it's good that we have updates on them. So I'm really glad about that. Now, the first thing is the 600i rework is apparently still in concept stage and is not moving right now. Again, there is really no other information outside of that, but at the very least, it is an update on it. I know that some people have been very, very curious as to what's going on with the 600i. So, just to give you a quick update, it does seem that it is not moving right now and it is still in concept. Now, in some more news, we know that the Zeus MR, the Legionnaire, the Genesis Starliner, and the Spirit E1 are all on hold due to lack of gameplay. This makes total sense. I'm not surprised about it. I do think it's interesting how they mention the Genesis Starliner, as we know that that is actually coming post 1.0 from last year's IAE, but still, it makes total sense for them to at least mention it with all these other ships. Now, one ship that was also mentioned but had a little bit more clarification was the Nautilus, the mine laying ship. Someone basically said in the initial leaks that John Crew said it was not worth thinking about. Of course, I think that's kind of a silly way of putting that, and I think John Crew thought that as well. So he actually went on Reddit and clarified this is a bit of a misinterpretation of what he initially said. Basically, said that we aren't focusing on the features or gameplay for that ship right now, so it's on the back burner. Once it does get into production, of course, they will look at the concept, make sure it is up to date, so it's up to standards as to what they have today, given the fact that the ship is so old. But again, I don't think there's much to worry about when it comes to the ship. Just like the Pioneer and other ships, it will get probably a slight reconcept, though it will eventually come out at some point, just probably not anytime soon. Now, one of the last things I did want to mention here is the fact that Drake Defense Con is actually canceled for this year. So it's not actually happening at all for Invictus. You will still be able to rent Drake ships, but you will not be able to roam around a Drake Defense Con hall, which kind of sucks. And it seems that alongside Drake Defense Con, there won't be any news on a new concept or a new Drake ship releasing. This brings me to my very probably incorrect theory about the Ironclad, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyways because I think there is at least a possibility. So basically, a developer responded to someone on Reddit saying, hey, this bug that you're talking about here is going to be fixed by 4.2, if not earlier. That confirms that 4.2 is our next patch, which I don't think is much of a surprise as we're probably not going to do many other point patches, but we will be getting 4.2. So on the progress tracker, all the things just like 4.1 that should probably release with 4.2 are set to release around the start of June or so, probably a little bit later given the fact that we have Invictus, but around June or so. So what I'm kind of getting at here is that on the progress tracker, there's a bunch of things that are probably going to release this patch: the sandbox activity, the new creature, sandbox location. But alongside of all that, there is a new vehicle that is redacted as well. Now, as we know, the term vehicle or ship is kind of thrown around a lot between a ton of different things. So we don't really know whether this is going to be a ground vehicle or a ship. But as you can probably guess where I'm going with this, I think this could possibly be the Ironclad. Now, this is going to get a bit speculative. There's going to be hopium, copium, whatever you want to call it here. So just bear with me for a second. First reason is the fact that we basically have confirmation that the Perseus is releasing an IAE this year. That helps us a little bit with process of elimination because we know that CIG is probably not going to be releasing the Ironclad and the Perseus at the same time. And as many people, including myself, have thought for the past couple of months, there has been this kind of thought that the Ironclad is probably further along than the Perseus, which I know we don't really have much evidence to back up, but I think there was some kind of word of mouth talk about how the Ironclad was in production earlier. Not entirely sure, but this could mean that the Ironclad releases before the Perseus. So if the Perseus is the IAE, then there is a chance we get it sooner than then. Now, this next thing is a little bit more insane, but I think that they kind of didn't have Drake Defense Con this year because the Ironclad wasn't ready and they didn't have anything to show yet. Now, of course, I could be absolutely wrong about that, and I probably am, but that's just kind of a gut feeling. I really don't know why they're not having Defense Con this year. I don't know if they've ever not had it in other years prior. I can't really remember, but it seems a little weird to just simply not have the event at all. And the way they worded it on the website was also a little bit weird to me. They basically said that Drake overstayed their welcome in ArtCorp, but I don't really understand exactly what that is supposed to mean. If that's like some lore reference or it's just like a silly way of saying like Drake is not happening this year. Not entirely sure, but I do just think the fact that it's not happening is weird across the board. Again, this doesn't mean that it's releasing for 4.2 or anything like that, or it even is the redacted vehicle on the progress tracker, but I just think there is like a super small chance. It's just the fact that they haven't said anything about one of the most hyped up ships of this year makes me feel like we might be a little bit closer to release than we initially thought we were. And just generally the fact that Drake Defense Con is canceled makes me feel really, really weird about Drake stuff right now. So hopefully in the near future we can get some information and maybe see it released. But again, this is all speculation, just having a little bit of fun here. Besides that, though, that is going to wrap it up for this video. I didn't want to take up too much of your time here. Wanted to give you a little bit of speculation, hopium or whatever at the end. But besides that, just going over a bit of the, news we've gotten over the past few days. I didn't talk about everything here, but really, if I did go through everything, it'd just be a lot of random tidbits of information. Some of it is a little bit too speculative, too, for me. So just wanted to give you some of the more exciting and upfront information. Besides that, though, again, thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to cover some more of this Invictus stuff that's happening over the next week or two. And let me know down below how you feel about not only this news, but Invictus. Are you excited for the event? Do you think the Idris is releasing? We should know within the next couple days. So, besides that, I would love to hear your thoughts, and I appreciate you sticking around. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next video.